Somebody got you.
The alarm going off.
Somebody put the sound back on it. I tested every time before we start to make sure the sound was on. Somebody tried to kill you.
Will be done by Commissioner Wilkins. Pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Albright. This time I'll turn it over to Mr. Wilkins.
Let us pray. Gracious God, our Father, we come before your presence this evening and say thank you. We thank you, Father God, first of all, for your grace and for your mercy. We pray, Father God, as we discuss the business before us, that you would endow us this evening, Father God, with knowledge, with wisdom, and with understanding. Father God, we ask a special blessing on this board and on our staff, Father God. Bless us and keep us, Father God. And most of all, we pray for unity in this nation. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Stand with me for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Microphone there. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Here.
Commissioner Albright?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gleason?
Here.
Commissioner Kaczynski? Commissioner Way?
Here.
Mayor Wheeler?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, that was roll call. All right, item 4, approval of agenda. Is there any additions or subtractions from the agenda?
Make a motion that we approve the agenda. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0, and that was the Mayor Pro Tem. All right, under the consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I do have one question on the consent agenda. In the minutes that we have, when we're keeping the minutes, it says comments made by Commissioner. One of the things that I was pretty vocal on was the second story on the police station, being able to do so. So I would like to just verbally state that I know it's in the audio recordings, but not in the written minutes.
Madam Clerk, can you check on that, and we'll go from there. All right. On the consent agenda, I believe it was Commissioner Wilkins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. That was Commissioner Wilkins. All right. We don't have a request to address the board. Is there any public comment? No public comment. Under old business, item 8A, design development update for the new police department. Mr. Frangos.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. It's the first time I've had the opportunity to address you in 2025, so happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right. So we're here tonight for a design update, exactly what the agenda calls out. We have Will and Christine both here from Little to present to us tonight. There's a full PowerPoint presentation that's in your package. I'm not going to go into any of that. I just want you to know that as we're progressing down this design path, this is where y'all need to interject. This is where you need to give us your feedback and your comments as we progress so we can respond as quickly as possible. We promised this time we were going to speak to you often and come back here frequently so we can keep you constantly up to date. The one thing I want us to do is not focus on dollar amounts or estimates or any kind of value right now. We're still in the design phases, and we're trying to implement the best design for our needs, both the staff here in admin, the police department, et cetera. You know, we have this growth that's staring us in the face, and we're trying to accommodate it as best as we can. We're trying to prepare ourselves for the next 20 years, and that's what, you know, hopes to accomplish. So there are steps along the way that we have to get there, and this is one of the meetings, the purpose of the meeting here tonight. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Lucy. I have Christina there too, she's supposed to be.
And as always, before you start, if you would, state your name and company, just so it's in the record. There it is, moving.
I'm Will Stewart with Little Diversified.
All right, I'll just start on with you.
No problem, yeah, if that's all right with you. Sorry, our clicker's not working, but good evening. It's the first time we've talked to you in 2025 as well, so Happy New Year to everyone. We're excited to be here, and it's very cold, so we'll keep it brief, but also give you best explanation as to where the design.
It's warm and fuzzy.
It's warm and fuzzy, that's right. So we'll keep it that way, We have, as Mike Frankos mentioned, made some design updates, and we'd like to walk you through those. The agenda, again, our introduction, we just did that, but we'll talk about the site plan updates. I think that's where the biggest changes have occurred to date. We'll look at the police department, the building floor plan again, and then we'll look at City Hall and community building renovation. And at the end, we'll touch on schedule and updates for the we spoke in December. Thank you. On the site, there's a few things that have led to some changes, and I'm going to touch on a few more as we get into the next slide, but we're here for now. Again, some of the kind of priorities, and we've added number 3 on here, mainly to address some of the costs and things that are associated with the site and what we were planning before. So we, again, want to maximize the on-site public and ADA parking, although that has some challenges we'll talk about, but again, that's the goal. Reduce the overall site impervious area, as we talked about last time, to avoid requiring on-site stormwater management and reduce the schedule and cost. And then the third thing that we've added here, just to kind of touch on, and I'll elaborate here in a few minutes when we're looking at a graphic, is really reduce some of the costs associated with the site. Previously, what we looked at, it's going to seem like we're taking a step backwards here, but if you stay with me, I'll explain it as best we can. But again, we're things that we were doing as we were looking at the earlier rendition of this addition, let's call it, that was previously connected to this building, had all of these things that are kind of listed below as some of the challenges that were increasing costs as we were doing that. So we're going to try to show you how we're going to avoid utility relocation, provide, or at least try to do our best for doing less grading and retaining walls on the site, avoid some of the parking lot demolition to the existing parking lots that we have and some of the resurfacing that would be required for that, minimizing some of the curb cuts at the right-of-way, so that includes all 3 streets that surround this property, and then centrally located generator, which also helps for some of our runs from the generator to these buildings once the new building were to come online. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. I just wanted to start, this is the site plan when we previously met with you. And so what you're going to see tonight, I think, is probably going to be a little bit, if you remember back to what we were doing last year, you're probably going to say, wait a minute, we're taking a step backwards. I want to frame it in a little different light because of some of the challenges that we just addressed, along with a few more. So one thing I do want to address off the top is, again, we went to this plan and studied this plan in an effort to keep both buildings connected, to keep the site more consolidated, and in many ways to keep the buildings connected directly to one another at the same finished floor elevation. So that's what we talked about last time. That is presented along with our work with Kennedy and Jael Wagner, who's our civil engineer on the project, created some challenges, especially as we looked at last time for accessibility, but it also created challenges for grading and having those buildings at the same finished floor elevation. So one of the things you may be asking is, hey, if we're making all these changes, why can't we just add on to this building directly? Why do we have to, make a separate building? Why is that necessary? And I want to address that head on. I think one of the things is from a fire separation and from a code perspective, adding on to this building, because this building is Type 5B, wood construction, with no sprinkler system, the challenge has become increasingly harder to add on and increase the square footage to a building of this size. So with those challenges, what will be required is a separation, a 2-hour firewall separation between this building, or fire barrier separation between this building and what will be added directly on. So say we were to take the addition and we plug it right to the end of this building, and we just extend the exact footprint of this building for the square footage we need for the police station. The challenges with that is that it's gonna come with an increased cost because of those firewall separations. It's also gonna, reduce the amount of windows and usable program square footage because you have a lot more internal core now to that building. So a lot of the periphery offices and things that we've talked about, gaining daylight in some of those. And then also what do you put in that program in the center core becomes a lot more challenging to figure out. It would also be more costly to construct, as I mentioned, and then the occupancy, during construction would be more challenging with this building. Keeping people operational and in this building while the construction were taking place or the addition were to happen on that end of the building, not necessarily the entirety of the building, but for safety concerns, it would probably be more challenging than not. So it would disrupt a little bit more of the kind of daily flow that we have here and possibly require some kind of a temporary relocation for some of those offices that are on that end of the building. The site-related challenges that come with not only adding on to the end of this building if that were an option, but also some of the challenges that we discovered with this one were obviously the accessibility that we talked about. But again, it's still thinking about less retaining walls. So keeping those at the same finished floor elevation, right, was gonna require us where that grade change happens between the gravel lot and the current police parking, or I should say parking in this lot to the west side of this building, was really causing us about 6 or 7 feet of grade change, so hence the accessibility challenges that we have to retain in earth, and then a lot more grading to require that parking to go kind of what you see on the west side, letter E on this plan. It's also, if we were to kind of disassociate the buildings, which I know you're gonna say, hey, we already looked at that. But when we looked at that, it was a much larger footprint, it was a 2-story building. And Commissioner White, I'll address the 2-story as well, and you mentioned in the notes. The other few things before I get to that is we're kind of looking at separating the buildings because we have much more flexibility on working with the natural topography of the site, which allows us easier accessibility, it allows us easier entrance and exits from those buildings, and it also allows us to minimize the amount of earthwork and grading that we have to do to accomplish a new building on the same site as this building with the parking intact. We have less utility relocations. One of the challenges with both of these schemes, if you were to add on to the end of this building, or in the plan that we previously looked at that's on the screen in front of you, was that a lot of where the utilities enter this building, unfortunately, are on the west end of the building, right where that new building addition would be. So they kind of come right through that parking lot that's existing outside to the west of this building and into this building. And that includes a lot of electrical, water, gas connections. So those add up, especially with site utility costs and the amount of trenching that we'd have to do to kind of move those out of the footprint of the old building. The other thing is this, removed one of the curb cuts that we have currently along Sandiford Street, moved it further down towards the intersection of Elm, but also added a curb cut along Elm Street so that we didn't have a big dead-end parking there. City Hall can also remain open in the kind of normal operation until obviously the renovations would occur, but that building construction could take place independent of this building. And then lastly, I think it does allow more flexibility on our openings, our ratings, and generally a much more cost-effective way to construct a building independently of attaching to this building or adding on to this building. If you don't mind going to the next slide. There we go. Wait a minute. So, one quick thing, I think, to get out of the way, at least that we can talk to, is the option of, okay, if we're going to build this building as far as future growth, why would we not plan for a second story, right? I think that's been kind of a question that we were asked last time, and something that we dove into. And for us, before we get into the details of this site plan, I just kind of wanted to touch on the fact that I think that the 2-story, while it's a good idea, I think in an effort to think about future growth and, hey, we're already going to build a building, why should we not add a second story or a shelf space or something like that? It comes with several challenges, but it also comes, as we've already been kind of challenged by cost, with quite a bit of cost increases, especially if you were to build even just the infrastructure for that. While that's not, a high cost increase, it does add to the steel package. We also have to do a lot of work on top of the building with a roof system to stub up for what would be there for the second story. And while not increasing the steel a ton from the structural perspective of beefing up that steel, it does require some additional steel on the building. The other thing it would do is we'd have to be required to think ahead about where we're going to put a building, or an elevator for that building, and where we'd have a stair and egress points for that building, which also takes up extra space on the property, but also more space internal to the building. And while that's not a huge hassle for us, we do 2-story buildings all the time, in this scenario, planning for that while not being there day one certainly stairs and elevators have increased costs by a lot, but also, do you frame over that elevator pit, and if you don't add the stairs now, and you do add the second story later, those stairs kind of become, superfluous to the building envelope in that point, so it's a little more challenging to think through circulation, egress, and exiting for that second story. So it's cost, it's a little bit of the vertical circulation, safety, egress, and then thinking through, obviously, constructability becoming a cost factor as well. And we also want to maximize, typically when you're building a building like this, you want to maximize the lifespan of each of those systems. So like the roof, you don't want to build it and then 5 years later tear that system off when you've got another 20 years left in it. So typically you could do that, but I think in this case, I hope these points address a little bit of why we think it's probably not what we would recommend to do. But I also think when we look at the plan that we've adapted for moving the police into their own building, a single-story building, you'll see that we've kind of accounted for the other comments which we received, which was about future growth. How are we going to accomplish more of that since we're going through the effort now of building this new building?
That's also a building, we would have to do a flat roof on the addition scenario. You would not have similar structure that we have in the work time. Complement.
That's a great point. Yeah, the aesthetics would definitely be, in many ways, compromised, or at least they wouldn't be kind of coherent with what you have here at the City Hall. Okay, so what we've come, and if you don't mind staying there just for a second, thank you. What we've come to show you is what we've done, and what we do believe saves, again, the most amount of site costs, provides us the best advantages for reducing costs, especially for the site. Again, those utilities we're adding up, parking demolition to the existing parking, resurfacing, grading, retaining walls, a lot of those things we're adding up for us. So, while I will say there are probably elements of this site plan that people are thinking, hey, we already did that, or two, not ideal necessarily, I do want you to kind of bear in mind that we're trying to do this in an effort to be the most cost conscious as we can as we build and plan for the future. So with the new site, there are plenty of positives though as well. Again, I mentioned less paving and demo for the parking. We're keeping much of the existing parking intact and operational. So one thing that you'll see on this plan is that we've only eliminated one curb cut, right? We've only moved one. We've infilled one. We, have not moved any site lighting. We've not moved any trees. We've not moved any vegetation. We've not removed any parking spaces. We've only added 3 parking spaces to the end of the parking lot where you would, add a curb cut and an exit out of the parking lot to Standard Bird and move that further down to similar to where the entry of the old driveway was for the house that was there a while ago. There's a lot less earthwork and grading as the police department can now be independent of the finished floor of this building, so it allows us to move that building a lot more flexibly with the site. It's just less utility relocation, and really, again, allows more flexibility on how we design that building as far as the openings and floor plan. Parking was reduced in this scheme compared to the last by 10 spaces. So unfortunately, while I said at the beginning, our goal is to maximize that, unfortunately, just with the way this is laying out, we are reducing. We're still adding spaces, but we reduced from the previous scheme by 10 spaces. The public parking component that gravel lot kind of serves now, for the town would certainly be more challenging and probably would be gone. Just thinking about the idea that this separate parking lot that we're showing would be more for staff or police or for, again, accessible parking as we've shown it here. And then the connection between the buildings we know is going to be a little more challenging, just a little bit more circumnavigation on the site between, accessible routes from City Hall to Police Department, but we can walk you through that as well. So what you're seeing here is the Police Department relocated to a further point to the west, about as far as we can get it to the west. Really helps us with our connection north to Masonic and keeping an accessible entry. So that's much more flat. From your sidewalk to the main door, you barely have a little rise in that sidewalk, so much more accessible route from the north. And then unfortunately, the way that the parking does sit on this, so one of the drawbacks of this is that the accessible parking, at least that we've worked with Civil to find, would be actually more towards the rear of this building. So one of the challenges with this, right, again, not optimal, but I do think it's in the effort of keeping things more cost-friendly, those would be the accessible dedicated parking required, those 2 spaces that would serve the front door, which unfortunately in this case means, yes, there would be more, navigation and sidewalk to get you to the main front door from those spaces. We did look into making the top 3 spaces, right below the word existing parking lot, accessible parking spaces, and they still could be. There's just a lot more site work and kind of ramping that we would have to do in that location if we wanted those spaces to be closer to the front door. So that's certainly something that we looked into, but the challenges were that there's a lot steeper grade that has to be navigated between those spaces along the Masonic and front door. The other thing is we've done here is, again, we've located the generator, if you can see letter F, a little more centrally located so that our span or our trenching that would be required from the generator to each building, both fully on this generator, the new natural gas generator as proposed, would be a lot shorter distances to the main electrical rooms. So that does help us in many cases, in many ways. It's also shielded from a little bit of what the site is stepping down in that location. So I do want to clarify, there are a set of stairs here to get you from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot, unless you have to go up around the sidewalk. So that's one thing that's happening. The second is you'll see that long linear line that's between the parking and the new building. And while that looks like a retaining wall, it's a small knee wall about 2 feet tall. So again, not technically a retaining wall, doesn't require special inspections, and would be a lot more of a spec feature just to help us transition grade there. There would be drainage that we'd have to locate and figure out between the building, the new building, and the parking to the east that's existing, just so we can get the water out of that area. So that's one thing we've been thinking about. And then again, showing accessibility from the existing ADA spaces. So all in all, again, I know that there's probably a lot of things that are not necessarily ideal here, but we do think that this significantly reduces the site costs, some of the utility relocation, some of the parking and demolition, some of the new paving and resurfacing. So this is where we think we can start to save significantly as, we look at, getting this thing in line with the budget. So let's take a quick look at, how the new building is shaped up. And I mentioned before that we've located a few more spaces, a few more opportunities for future growth. I think previously we had, one office that was future growth related right in here, and then we were thinking about, hey, how do we accomplish more than that? So what we've done, if you do remember correctly, in the previous team where the buildings were connected, we had 3 rooms that were still dedicated inside of this building, City Hall, to the police department, that they were still kind of sharing, and everyone, the thought was, can we get that all under one envelope, or what do we do with those spaces? So when we separated the buildings, we had to pull those 3 spaces, obviously, with the police department program. So we've located those here. Those are evidence storage, those are records, and patrol storage. So those 3 things have been moved into this envelope. So this envelope increases slightly by about 400 or 500 square feet to accomplish those 3 rooms. But the other thing that we've done in doing so is located a few more things. One is we were able to expand, because of the freedom we have of the footprint, a little bit about how that patrol offices are laid out on the east side of the plan. So now you see 6 desks in there, which previously we had 4. So we're accounting for 2 additional patrol officers in that space. We have a future growth office that's kind of in the middle of the plan, in the south end of the page, that's kind of right there in the middle of the 4. We also have a future shared office that we were showing before that was a little bit smaller, and we're able to expand the width now because we were able to take some of the services and condense them onto the right side of the page. So we're able to get an extra office in there, or desk. And then we also have a future growth office that we've added on the west side of the plan, just north of the chief's office. So all in all, it's about 8 or so more, kind of like, I would say, offices or future growth that we've been able to accommodate in this plan.
It could even be 8 to 12 employees, depending on how many folks were in each office, and kind of double up.
One other item that we did is we increased slightly the size of the break room, or kitchenette in this case. Previously it was serving, obviously, the training room. In this case, because it's its own building and not able to, as easily directly attach to this building, share with what we've created in some of the renovations as a proposed plan for this building. We extended that just slightly so we could have a small area for an actual kitchenette, a little more space in there, so you could have a little seating if you wanted as well for the police department within that building. It could also be still used for the training rooms as well.
Excuse me, before we go on to that, let's hit questions on the police department first. And first off, I'll ask city manager, has the police department looked at these plans?
Yes, sir, absolutely. They've been involved in the whole process all along the way.
So are they happy with what they see here? Do they have any suggestions?
They've had input and they're completely happy. And I hope Troy will speak up if I'm out of turn here.
Okay, one other question, and let's just assume that at Upward Basketball, a fight breaks out and there's 15 parents, and they have to actually be arrested. Now, I know most of our stuff we take to Oxford, but is there any need or design to have a holding area in our police department in case we have more than one or two people being arrested at one time?
I'd say currently probably the two intake rooms, would probably use for that. But if we have a big incident like that, I don't foresee us coming to the police department. We would
Just go straight.
go straight to the sheriff's office.
Well, you know how parents are when their little kids are playing basketball. All right, Commissioner Wilkins. Commissioner Albright.
No, nothing.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Not excited.
Okay, why?
Yeah, why? We started out a conversation with our Director of Planning, stating that with the growth we expect, and I agree. We're gonna build a police station, we're gonna add 14 parking places, and if we have a lot of growth, and we need to add 6 police officers, we're gonna need more space in the police department. And going to a second story is extremely expensive. When these two buildings were connected, I would look at it, again, looking at future growth. I don't know that I'm gonna be here for the growth, but the bottom line is, if we have the growth that could be expected, and believe me, I'm for controlled growth, but controlled growth can add a lot of population and a lot of roofs to our community in a short amount of time. If we need to add that many police officers, the 14 parking places that we're adding to this whole drawing is not gonna be enough, not only for the police officers, for cars, for police officers' cars. When the building were connected, at some point, there would be a possibility that we took this campus and made it a completely for the police department. And the city looked at growth spaces, a place outside of the city current campus to build a new city hall. I mean, I think we're building something that will serve its purpose for a couple of years. And then we'll be back here deciding how we're gonna split up these two buildings. And do you want city employees or police department employees having to walk outside in weather like tonight to get to the other building? My concern is not that this would not do the purpose that it's intended to do today, and maybe for a year or two. But it's not long-term. And if we're looking for long-term, that would be my only concern. Thank you.
Commissioner Way.
What the Mayor Pro Tem said.
Okay. Commissioner Kuczynski.
So, when I'm looking at these drawings here, we started with adding a wing on of 4,800 square feet to add to what we had. So when I go to the first drawing, which is the last one we saw, police department was at 5,940 square feet, gross, I'm saying that's gross square feet, I'm assuming. And the new drawing with the separate building is now showing the police department gross square footage up to 6,490 square feet. So I would imagine that the price is gonna go up because the square footage is going up. I'm really concerned about the fact that, and this comes down to continuity on this board, and Bobby, you can remember this with me. We took down and burned a building, the end of this block, to build a public parking lot, because we have heard complaint after complaint after complaint about public parking. And now we're gonna move a building, and I hate to tell you this, but I feel like we've gone back 4 years. We're back to 2 buildings, which didn't work the first time. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 spots behind the police department and a generator. So I'm assuming that's an emergency generator that we're talking about, a generator?
Right.
Okay, because we don't have one here now, so that's why I'm like, oh, wait a minute, where'd that come from? You said, I'm hitting a couple different things here. To move to do it in the last drawing, Barbara, can you go back 2 screens? to do it in the last drawing where we only had a walkway between the buildings, that one. To move all those utilities that are back there, and I see the little spot there, it was gonna cause to extend the utility lines and move them and everything else. Well, now we're gonna do a whole nother building that's gonna have to have its own complete set. We're still gonna have to extend the utility lines. So I'm not seeing a difference in this idea, except we gotta move those lines a lot farther now than before and buy a different unit. It's not one unit that can do that can do the whole building. It is now another unit for that building and a separate one for this building. So, I understand about the property distance. I absolutely understand. Take me back to the sprinkler system again, because I think we talked in the last meeting where I spoke to the fire marshal, and he said we didn't need sprinkler systems in this building or that one. And if we extended this building, we didn't need So you just mentioned something about fire code and sprinkler systems. So if the fire marshal says we don't need it, and you're saying if we attach the building to this one, what are you saying?
So I'll speak to that one first. Sprinkler system is not required. So again, I'm not disagreeing with anything that the fire marshal or that conversation. The difference is the allowable area square footage per the building construction type. And because there is no sprinkler system in this building, and because of the type of materials, right, the wood construction of this building is classified under a certain 5B type of construction, because of that construction type, and because there's no sprinkler system, there's a lot less allowable area of a footprint for a single-story building than, say, a steel construction building with a sprinkler system, right? A lot larger allowable footprint. Adding on to this building does not require a sprinkler system either. And none of these schemes, to be clear, do not require a sprinkler system. The clarity comes between how we separate the two of these buildings being built together.
But why do they have to be separate? Why can't we add a wing?
You can. The problem is you kind of incur a problem where you go over an allowable square footage allowed for that construction if it's combined together. And what I mean by that is...
Please.
Because, yeah, this is a little bit deep, and I apologize, but this, in simple terms, I can describe it. There's 5 different construction types, from, like, most fire protectants to, like, leaks, right? And we sit on the far end of that as far as wood construction and then sprinkler system. That allows you a very limited area to build under one, right, if you're building onto this building,
right,
one building, and combine that as one, say, 16,000 square foot building.
Right.
We are past that tick mark by adding the square footage that's needed in the program for that to become one building under one roof with no fire separation. So in order to do that, you essentially can add to this building, you just have to separate them by code with a fire barrier, which separates this building from the new building with a 2-hour separation. So in essence, what you're doing is you're creating a fire barrier so that if one side of this building were to catch on fire, it would not obviously travel near as fast or affect this side of the building within that radius.
So, when we started with this whole project and dredging it back up again, the drawing that we had from Little was a wing added to the existing building.
That's right.
And I don't understand why someone would tell us it could be done that way. And now we are far from that. And we went back into it, I went back and looked at drawings, and I'm like, why can't we do this? You suggested this, not you personally. You suggested this, and now we're stepping away from it to 2 buildings again. And I'm like, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to find out it's going to cost so much we can't afford it again. We've been down this road before. And the drawing that we started out to resurrect this was one bigger building. And now we're being told, well, that drawing was fantasy land? And I'm not insulting anybody, I'm just, why would the previous people say that can be done, and now we're being told it can't be done? And that's what I don't understand. I'm the customer. I give you this piece of paper and say, can you do this for $4 million? Yep, sure we can. Well, look at us now. And I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just trying to understand. It was a 4,800 square foot addition. We're over 6,900 square foot now. And I'm like, what are we doing? I don't want it I mean, the police department needs more space. I got that. I'm the one who resurrected this thing. But I just want us to be reasonable about it. Little said we could do this, and now we're being told it can't be done. So I'm gonna shut up now.
You're good. I think if you look at, to address what you're saying, I understand how it seems that way, what we're telling you. It can be done. Let me put it out there. What we were showing originally is an early concept. Again, this is just more or less a site test fit. The early program was also less than what was actually validated for the police for future growth and for what they need in the building. There are also ways that, we could probably tighten up this plan if we were to shrink the community and training rooms, things like that, right? So there are ways that we can do that. To answer your question, what we showed you can be done. It just has to be done with the fire separation, which I was just talking about. And that was part of the early concept too. It could be the same thing there no matter what. So the idea was that, yes, it can be done. It still can be done. It wasn't like we were providing something that I don't think we could do. We were providing something as an early concept that, we can't show every fire code rating and every opportunity on there, but we'd have to kind of get into that as we design the building. Some of these things, depending on how the square footage shakes out, wouldn't require that, right? If we had a lot less square footage than 4,800 or 5,600 or even 6,500 square feet. So I think that's probably where some of the confusion is that it's not like we were falsifying information and saying you can do everything.
No, I'm not saying that. I didn't mean to imply that.
No, I understand. I guess I'm just saying, what we were showing still can be done. It just has to be done under certain different fire code, regulations, building code regulations that would make the case for saying that a separate building would be far less costly to construct.
So it's cost. That's what we're really coming down to.
Absolutely.
Because there's no doubt in my mind, I've resurrected this because I walked through that police station, and I know that they need more space. They don't have enough space. But I just don't understand why we couldn't stay with what we had. First, we had this little walkway, and now we've got two separate buildings, and the citizens have lost the parking lot that they were promised 5 years ago. And there's only, like I said, there's only like 13 more spots with the new drawing. And, we get all the other ones that the police officers don't need, but if we did need them, if the chief decided to have a meeting with all his police officers, those police cars have to park somewhere.
Yes, it is primarily financially cost.
I don't want to finish this project and say, oh, well, we should have done this and we should have done that. So I kind of agree with Commissioner that the Mayor Pro Tem is, I'm not going to sign off on this and get into it if it's really not going to serve the purpose. So the utility lines, if we have to have two sets, why is that cost efficient?
Well, it's really not the two sets, right? We're going to have to serve the new building with utilities directly for that building anyway. So we were always going to make those taps from the main Sanderford and bring those directly to the building. We always do that as a more AV as you can because of the cost of trenching and the cost of connection. The challenge is when you put a new building footprint, even in the original 4,800 attached to this building, it has its own challenges along with the way that we're looking at the one on the screen where it's connected to this building. The main challenge isn't with the new connections and having to provide them to both buildings. The main challenge is that the new building sits over top of the existing connections to this building, so you're having to relocate them outside of that footprint and make those connections in a different location as well as serve the new building. So adding a new building isn't necessarily the cost. You're going to have that incurred cost no matter what. It's relocating what we're putting a building on top of that we're not allowed to do that would cause that. Whereas in the new plan, again, we can leave everything as it is, make new connections in smaller places, but also still serve the building in a more direct line from Sanford.
Thank you.
I got them all. Commissioner Way.
Chief Wheeler? Mr. Franco?
Sir.
I'm gonna go ahead and I know they're gonna finish their presentation. I know that it was just brought up that you've been involved in the design process. Are you happy with this footprint and design process for your department? Do you believe it's gonna meet the needs of your department in the next 10 years, let's say?
I would say,
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't want you to. I don't want you to. Let me rephrase this. I don't want to settle just because. Because if it's a $4 million plan or a $7 million plan, we're going to be invested in it anyway.
right.
So my thing is, if we're gonna do it, I wanna do it right the first time. So we're not sitting back here 10 years from now saying, oh, we should have done it this way. And I'm not saying, you know, I do see where you went back in and you took the notes. And this building gives them more storage for evidence storage and stuff out of this building altogether now. The hallways are moved, they're separate, they're in their own secured location, and I see and understand all that. And Mr. Fringos, does the reorganization of this building gonna meet the plans for your department? And Mr. City Manager, the same for you. Is it gonna meet the plans for your department? That's my only concern is I don't want to say, okay, 10 years from now, when the water and sewer is released and we're developments and businesses and all of a sudden we've got to hire somebody else in your department and poor Lee's got to have 2 more people to help him do stuff. And I mean, I just want to make sure that we do it right the first time.
I think we could plan for 20 years, and I think that's as far away as we could hope to look. And I think this square footage in both buildings accommodates that. I think 10 years is way too short. I wouldn't do it just for 10 years.
Well, but that was just being hypothetical.
Yeah, you gotta plan for 20.
I agree.
And I think both of these buildings give us enough of that future growth.
I think a lot, and we've talked about this a lot too, and I think for several years, yeah, it does accommodate what the police department needs, but I'm thinking probably in the future, as we grow a lot on the east side of the city.
You're gonna need a substation.
We're probably gonna need a substation, but maybe fire has something over there where we go in with spot, maybe a couple off, somehow we work it out over there, but I would think that adding a second story and having all the police department resources here on this side, then yes, as we grow and we get bigger on the east side, we also can accommodate or have some resources and stuff on the east side of the city. So I think this design it definitely works for the police department. As opposed to having a second story, I would prefer to have
A substation later.
yes, on the east side if it comes to that.
All I need. Thank you.
City Manager, you wanted to respond to?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Commissioner Way's, question. I strongly believe it's gonna meet our needs. We've got 3 flex spaces in this building with the new proposal. Our first project back several years ago for $9 million got shelved because of the cost was just far too high. So when we came back and decided to revisit, we looked at a 3.5 and at a 4 range. This first proposal that they brought back was, I'm gonna say in the 7 estimate, high, 7. That is not a number I wanted to bring back to this board, and y'all haven't heard numbers because they haven't been finalized yet. They were preliminary numbers and estimates. So, we met, talked, and asked them, this will work. You can do what he wants to do for 7 or so, but that's not a number I wanted to bring back here. So I said, let's look and investigate any way we can adjust and bring these numbers back down to what the board heard to begin with, which was $3.5 to $4 million. So one of the big ones was the site improvements, and it was like a $1.4 million estimate to do that site work, to be able to fill in the lower area and extend the building on that side and do all that. So when they went and started exploring ways to reduce the cost of the building and still give us what we needed, they came up with a building that's pushed back in the parking lot.
And we had the preliminary site work already completed from that lot area over there from where we started, correct?
Right.
So all that stuff's, where they tested the soil and.
That was done, but when we extended the building out into that lower space, then we've got all that fill to do, site work to do down there we didn't have before.
Right, but going back to this plan of the second building, that goes into the footprint where we've already done the site work and tested the soil and things like that, so that.
Yeah, that, yeah.
4 wells drilled,
Yeah.
yeah, correct.
So, you know, and to look back, our growth is gonna be on the eastern side of town.
Yes.
That's where we've got plus or minus 4,000 or 5,000 new homes and residents coming one day when the infrastructure which also comes through. It just made a lot of sense to me to look at a substation, a fire department, police department, fire department substation on that side of town, Mount Energy area that would serve that side of town where our growth is coming, not all being downtown. So
I concur.
they can do what they said in the last presentation, but we're looking ways to reduce that cost and plan for the east side of town, so. Okay.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Again, it may serve our needs for a few years, but the bottom line is you get 10 more employees and you got no parking spots. Just the parking alone is a problem. And everybody's gonna say, no, it's not a problem, until it's a problem. I agree with the last statement about a substation for both the fire department and the police department, somewhere where the greater population is. However, I just think separating these two buildings when, as you said, and you could put a masonry firewall between these two buildings and put them just like that. And they're not breaking any codes, you don't need any sprinklers, and you can add 6,000 feet. The biggest issue is the grading and bringing these two buildings to grade. Again, my concern is just, I won't be here 3 years from now, but I want to make sure that we're not, again, in a position where we got to already start to, I don't understand how we can move a department that's not in the building now. How many square feet do you have where you are now?
1,700 plus or minus.
Which is almost all the space that the police department is using now, into this space. And if we're gonna have 500, 1,000 new homes, you're not gonna be alone.
Good morning.
You're gonna have other people in the office. Carl may have an assistant. Again, all of a sudden, in 2 years, when the sewer starts flowing in 27, all of a sudden, it's gonna explode. I remember when I first moved here, we had this building, and your department was run out of a trailer in the back of the building, and they did everything. They did, so again, my concern is not for me. I mean, I bought my first house with 3 bedrooms, because we were gonna have 2 kids, then we had 5. So, I had to get a bigger house. Then we moved here, my wife wanted to get a house with 5 bedrooms, and we had no kids. So, again, my concern is
Come back.
really thoughtful. I don't want it to sound like I'm against anything. I'm for getting the police department what it needs as soon as we can get it. That's all.
But this is a different wife, wasn't it?
You won't have to go there.
Mr. Wilkins.
What is the actual cost difference between the old site plan and the new?
I cannot validate the numbers at this time, we just know that it'll be.
Estimate?
We can.
We won't hold it to you, we want your.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna write it, no.
Professional estimation.
I would say, I'd say a third, if not more, from what we're.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I know, Commissioner Gleason, I know you mentioned that priority, you can put 2 walls on a priority, parking it. It's really utilities and grading, it's gonna add most of your 10 parking.
1/3, wow, okay.
And again, I'm not a cost estimator, but in my responsible opinion, I would say roughly we're looking at that kind of thing.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions before we move on to our building? All right, thank you.
Give me that.
Go too fast.
There we go. No, not yet. I'll let Christine has got a good handle on this, and I think the main thing is just that we're thinking about, hey, not a lot has changed from the last time to this one, except for the fact that those dark blue spaces become future growth, but I think really that was, the difference in the square footage and what we're adding now back to this building.
That and the fact that we need a conference room and a break room, which you already addressed in the presentation. So we do have, 3 significant sites, large enough rooms for future growth, plus the existing flex space that currently the Veterans Affairs, needs. So there's 4 areas that can be growth, in the future, fairly significant, and, that conference room could be converted to even for more growth if necessary.
I mean, nothing has changed since we spoke to you last time besides those 4 spaces. So thinking about the same users, I think Christine brought up a good point. I think to kind of what we hear is the resonating, factor here is growth. I think the conference room that Christine mentioned that's in green, of that plan, could also be divided into two offices or shared, again, similar to how the police is doing as well, if that was needed, given that you have meeting space here, you have mayor's office, but, for now, I think that's probably a big spot for multiple departments or groups to get together and meet, so we should make that occur.
Commissioner Kuczynski.
So, Mr. Frango's community development space in this drawing is 1,161 square feet. You're losing 400 square feet.
It's all hallway. It's all that yellow area that you see as circulation, that's not included. So the dark orange or the dark yellow is what they're calling the actual department. But if you added that hallway space in, we wouldn't be losing anything.
All right, just want to make sure you got enough.
Commissioner Way, any questions? Commissioner Wilkins, any questions?
No, sir.
Commissioner Albright? Mayor Pro Tem? City Manager?
I believe Will made a very good point, and, Christina, we've got flex space where the VSO is now, and I've had a conversation with Drew to let him know, Drew, Cummings, County Manager, that space his VSO's in is a 1 day a week. It's not long-term permanent space, and it could go. If we need it, we will. So that is flex space in addition to the other three that Will pointed out. The dark blue spaces are considered flex or growth space for either another planner or for admin or finance to expand. I just wanted to point that out. We do have wiggle room in this building when this is finished. Thank you, sir.
All right. Is that it?
There's one last slide of schedule update.
Okay.
It really hasn't changed much besides the 2 weeks that we've been before the break from now. Really, the key milestones is that we're just tracking where we are today. The 21st of January, we're having this design development update. On the 4th of February, we'll be back here, to do an update as well. Again, that will be the new design development presentation, followed, by design development approval, hopefully at that point, and electronic speaking, but I think that's correct. And again, looking at construction documents, so if we were to go forward with this project, again, given we have things to work out between now and the next meeting, we just wanted to show the kind of anticipated schedule in April, thinking about how the systems go together, and then looking at some of the milestones, for that presentation being April 22nd, or roughly around that date. Final site permit submissions and everything being, can start as early as, February, so the site would have to start a lot earlier. As you can see in the top right, the bidding and permitting for the site is a lot longer period, so usually it's gonna be 4 to 6 months, somewhere in that range. That's what we got from our civil engineer, and that's been holding pretty true. It could be faster than that, but again, it's one of those, I'm not a cost estimator, I'm not, I can't control what happens on the review side. But then looking at that bottom right is really looking at some of those milestones. So in February, we'd aim, again, to submit for site permit submission. April 29th, looking at building permit submission, so this is coming around pretty quick, a couple months from now. And then looking at the advertised for bids on that same day, on the 29th. 21-day bid period, which is very, very standard. 21 working day bid period happens, and so we're looking at awarding a bid to a contractor if we were to go forward, roughly at the end of May, roughly about a month after the document. I just want to give an update on how things have worked out, or what happens.
Commissioner Kuczynski.
So when will you be able to give us an estimated cost on this project?
We'd have to work through changes that we've done to the site, and if those are approved, we imagine it would be around 2 weeks after that point.
2 weeks after what?
Well,
Approve the current drawing.
exactly. What we'd like to do if we come on February 4th is we'd like to get approval for what we're showing as far as an approval at that point. I would say roughly 2 weeks following that, we can have a return on cost estimate for that period.
So if the cost estimate comes back, we can stop the project again? God forbid, I don't want to do that again.
What we'll typically do, and the reason I say 2 weeks, is that cost estimate usually comes in before that, and we usually have to work back and forth, because they'll have things in there that, that there's no way we can project that we have to, we just want to be able to work through the numbers with them, and oftentimes that works things down, so we can get the most accurate cost based on what we're showing. There's oftentimes clarification needed with the cost estimator too, to clarify construction types, details, materials, connections, a lot of things that add to the cost of the building that we have to go through with them. So it'll be a pretty refined process at that point. Now, at that point, if it's, more than $4 million or whatever the budget is, we have to work and decide how we're going to take money out of that project. That would be the process that we have to go through right following.
And we pulled the wheelchair lift out already. I don't see it here, so I'm assuming it's pulled.
I heard
What do we have, one wheelchair a year? It just was a ridiculous expense. And there are lockers in the police room, in the police department, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think that's got us. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you again in February.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But you guys are okay with us proceeding with this path and trying to get further.
Nobody listens to me, baby, you're good.
You know, we don't wanna, like, this is a cost estimate, you know.
Just ask anybody in the room, they'll all tell you.
Mr. Mayor, do you want a consensus for them real quick?
Do we need to,
I think it would probably be helpful for them to have some formal direction from the board, so something like a motion to continue proceeding as, Jeffrey has.
I know we weren't going to, put it to a vote. So, we'll do a general consensus. Commissioner Wilkins,
I'm good with what they presented this evening.
Mr. Albright, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll go along with going ahead with what you have.
McGraw, didn't we? Commissioner Kuczynski,
We'll see in February.
Commissioner Way.
I'm good to proceed.
So, we got you covered there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
All right, we move now to item 9, which is new business. On-call engineering firm selection. Mr. Barclay.
Oh, you guys are on, huh? Wow. You have to verify it.
See, that's why we need an engineer. He knows how to do that.
Do I need to grab another battery, or is that what's wrong with it?
Is it best you turn that open, the attachment?
The battery is good.
Carl, is it
Okay.
just one call?
Yes, it's that presentation, I'll do it that way.
Wow. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I'm Carl Barclay, your city engineer. Tonight I have a presentation on the on-call contract for general engineering and other professional services. And the purpose tonight is to inform the board of the need, the process that we use, and staff selection for the recommended firms. Okay. So, no single firm can deliver all of our CIP projects, nor respond to all emergent issues. This on-call contract will help us deliver the CIP projects as scheduled and also respond to emergent issues as they arise. By having firms with the necessary experience, expertise, knowledge, and familiarity with CREEDMOOR already under contract. The anticipated CIP project types include roadway evaluation and analysis, sidewalk gaps, drainage infrastructure repair projects, drainage area studies, concrete dam evaluation and repair, flood and inundation study, emergency action plans, GIS services, etc. Just want to note that specific project updates will be given at the retreat on February 8th. So these are just project types that we're focusing on at the moment. The range of expertise that we need for these projects, it covers the span from the primary deliverable to the support activities. Almost everything is built on dirt, so geotechnical engineering is extremely important for any of these projects. Environmental analysis, environmental permitting, surveying, field investigations, materials testing, etc. Now, the North Carolina General Statutes, they specify what kind of, what methods for procurement is required for municipalities. If you go down to the fourth bullet there, for professional services of engineers, architects, and surveyors, The method for procurement is qualifications-based selection, abbreviated QBS, also known as the Mini Brooks Act. Now, just a brief overview of that process, what it involves. First thing that we had to do is develop, announce, and distribute a request for qualification, an RFQ. That's where we list the project types that we anticipate, the expertise and skills that we're looking for. Then we receive statements of qualifications, or SOQ, from interested firms. We evaluate them, and then we rank them according to the selection criteria that is spelled out in the RFQ. We make a selection of which firms we think will work for us, interview them if needed, confirm and finalize our selection. Then comes contract negotiation, where we actually sign a professional services agreement with them. And if negotiations were to fail for some reason, we proceed to the next firm. So just to reiterate, the law requires that the selection is based on competence and qualifications, not price. This next slide, why on-call, could also be called what is on-call. So the QBS method of procurement, obviously, is not fast. It requires effort from staff, it requires effort from the consultant. Now, it's appropriate for one large project. You have a new police department building, new community center, makes perfect sense. But it's very inefficient when you have numerous smaller projects. So an on-call contract is a method of complying with the law while increasing the speed of government delivery. Basically, we're using the QBS method for a term contract. For us, it'll be a 3-year term. So no projects are signed at this point, no money is committed at this point. It's simply using the QBS method to pick qualified firms for a 3-year term. That's it. Then as projects are signed, they'll be assigned to these firms as task orders. So the individual task order, that scope of work and price will be negotiated individually with the firm, and then it'll come back to the board for approval. So the board will approve the funding for the individual task orders as they arise.
Hold on just a second, Carl. Commissioner Wilkins.
Carl, can we go back? The term contracts, what's the expense for those? I understand nothing's committed right now.
For the term contract?
Yeah.
There's no money exchanged at this point. It's just signing a 3-year agreement to have the firm on call ready to receive work from us. No money.
Okay, thank you.
We understand, no money at this point.
Any other questions while we hesitated? Thank you, Carl. Continue, please.
So when we started this process, the question of how many came up pretty quickly. So we need sufficient expertise and we need sufficient manpower, and the RFQ listed the types of work and the expertise that we're looking for. Of course, no single firm has all the expertise, and available manpower in the firms that fluctuate. So in order to ensure that we have the manpower when we need it, we need a little bit of redundancy built into our selection. We also want to remain flexible in how we selected these firms so that we can get the best combination of firms for CREEDMOOR. So in the RFQ, we stated that we are open to multidisciplinary firms, which is pretty much the norm, with or without sub-consultants. We're also open to specialized firms that have more focused expertise. Now, having multiple firms, it's like having tools in our toolbox. We want to make sure we have in our toolbox things that we might need, but we don't want to get crazy and overload with too much, because we want to be able to give enough work to each firm that they develop a familiarity with CREEDMOOR. Now, if you recall last year, we advertised a couple RFPs for construction projects and had rather low response. So we're sort of concerned when we advertised this, but we were very surprised at the response. We were surprised in a good way. We had lots of responses, and they were all from highly qualified firms. That's definitely a positive thing, but it also makes it challenging to narrow it down to which ones are the right ones and what is the best combination of firms for CREEDMOOR going forward. So we advertised the RFQ by posting it on the website for 4 weeks. Then we also pushed it out to 18 firms that we thought might be a good match for us. We don't want to, sit back and hope somebody looks at the website. We pushed it out, and of those 18, 8 submitted an SOQ, either as a prime consultant or as a sub. So in the end, a total of 14 SOQs were submitted from prime consultants. 12 were from multidisciplinary firms, and 2 were from more specialized firms. So after evaluating them and discussing them and considering many facets of the whole situation, in the end, we recommend that 4 multidisciplinary firms and 2 specialized firms are selected. So, who are the firms? Just to give you a little synopsis about the firms that we are recommending. Rummel, Klepper & Call, known as Arcane K, is a large multidisciplinary firm. They have about 1,700 employees, 300 in North Carolina. And an important note is they listed a subconsultant, Schnabel Engineering. Schnabel is an expert in concrete, earth, and dams. That's one of the key expertise that we need for Lake Rogers Dam. Second one is Summit Engineering. That's a medium-sized multidisciplinary firm, about 400 employees, most in North Carolina. And they're headquartered just down the road in Hillsborough. They can also provide many of the support services that I mentioned in-house, including surveying, geotech, material testing, just to name a few. And their previous work in CREEDMOOR includes the design of shelter number 1 at Lake Rogers Park. The third one, Weatherall, is a smaller multidisciplinary firm, and they're headquartered in Raleigh. They have 2 other offices, all of them are in North Carolina. Of note, they're the only historically underutilized business to apply as a prime consultant. And just like Summit, they provide many of the support services in-house, including surveying, construction, inspection, and administration. So those first 3, multidisciplinary firms, large, medium, small, each with their own strengths. The next one, JMT, is a small specialized firm with a focus on traffic engineering. You may recall they addressed the board several months back regarding the services that they can offer us. And we anticipate updating our ordinances regarding the requirements for traffic impact analysis for developers. And this firm is an expert in the field, and they're best able to help us develop those ordinances. Next one, Site Environmental Engineering is a very small firm with a focus on pipes, water, sewer, and storm drains. And they partnered with a company called Vision NC, and that firm specializes in video inspection of pipes, spot repairs, and full-length relining of pipes. If you recall the presentation of the Clifton Avenue project several months back, there was a series of pictures where workers were gathered around a table, and they're spreading epoxy on a fiberglass repair sleeve and plugging into a pipe to patch the pipe. That was Vision NC at work. Repairing damaged pipe and full-length relining of pipe is a lower cost alternative to the traditional excavating and replacing the pipe in its entirety. And since in the 2 years that I've been here, we've identified numerous pipes in our aging infrastructure that have issues of varying degrees. So with sites providing the professional engineering services for Vision NC, this team will be able to safely and efficiently repair or rehabilitate many of those pipes, eliminating the need for a costly replacement. And last but not least, we have the Whoopie Company. Another small, multidisciplinary firm headquartered in Raleigh, approximately 100 employees, most of them in North Carolina. They have decades of experience in CREEDMOOR on a wide range of projects. Currently, they provide GIS services for a variety of mapping and inventorying projects. And because of their extensive work in CREEDMOOR over the years, there may be future projects where their experience and background knowledge of the situation is critical. So, for these reasons, I believe that these 6 firms are the right tools to put in our toolbox. Do you have any questions for me about what we're going to get started?
Commissioner Albright.
So Carl, what brought these up? Like, we haven't heard you talk about them previous to this, so was there something that kind of caught your eye that you said, these are people that we should have for these things?
Well, CIP project list, there's many projects on there, and the thought of going out for each project and advertising, the qualifications-based selection and advertising for each one of those is a pretty daunting task. To do it and get a package of them like this for a 3-year term, then we can assign those projects to them, so it's a lot more efficient than doing them one project at a time. Some projects are big that might not seem that cumbersome, but for the smaller ones, it's a whole lot of work just to get a firm on board for something small. If you recall the public parking easement, that was small enough to below the threshold of the exemption for that project, and did not do the QPS project.
Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Wilkins.
Nothing, sir.
Commissioner Way.
Nothing, sir.
Commissioner Kuczynski.
Wooten's been ours for years because it takes them years to get a project done. Before we go any further, I have a question for you, Kevin. With all these contractors and this engineering and the problems we've had, I would like to have a sunset clause on every contract we do with any, Wooten especially. And if I'm offending anybody about Wooten, I don't really care, because 5 years for one project was too long.
Yeah, I think if you saw, Carl's already proposing that each of these engagements would be limited to a
3 years.
term. Each engagement could then be renewed presumably by the board if you're happy with the services received. But each one of these will be limited to 3 years, a 3-year on-call service term.
But that's just the on-call service. I'm saying if we engage them in any projects, I want a penalty clause in there.
Addressed on a task order by
Right,
task.
exactly.
Separate
That's
issue.
not something, I think it would be irresponsible for this board to say right now that we're going to put a sunset clause, a standardized sunset clause on every task order. I think that's something that needs to be negotiated on a project by project basis.
Yeah.
If this board in the future asks for a massive project that might take 10 years reasonably
That's
for
different,
full
yeah.
completion, your sunset clause, it might not be reasonable to impose a 5-year sunset clause on that project.
Right.
Whereas, some of the other smaller projects that we've seen that should take, a few months that have dragged out longer, probably it's reasonable to do that. So that's something that would need to be negotiated.
As the projects come up.
Task order by task order.
And I think that's what she was looking for, is each individual job. We don't want to take 5 years or something.
That's something that I think we would do, certainly city staff want to be, they've more than anybody, borne the brunt of some of these things that have drawn out, and so I think that's something they'd be very conscious of as they start negotiating individual task orders for projects.
So I know we have no projects yet, this is just on-call servicing part of it. But we've got the one of them that specializes in dam construction. Do we need that? Because we say the dam needs to be repaired, then it doesn't need to be, then it does need to, I'm sorry, it's gone back and forth 4 times. Yep. And I don't know if the darn dam, do we need to hire an on-call engineer for the dam?
Evaluate. The evaluation makes sure that no repairs are necessary, but it does need to be inspected and evaluated by an engineer.
Because we've done that. We've done it.
We get an engineer to go back, but we did also get another letter from state dam inspections that
The dam inspection department sent us
There is
one?
actually a dam inspection department from the state.
I've heard them referred to that.
Okay, all right, well, that's the only question I had, is because it needs to be done and it doesn't need to be done, and I'm like, where are we with
We're
this?
back to being it needs to be done.
In your package, you'll see that there is a requested motion that has been deleted out. This is for information only at this time.
Mine wasn't deleted out.
So, we're working out of the master agreement right now, so when that's.
That's why, so we can see it. That makes sense.
That's-
So we can see the master agreement. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Carl, as always, thank you, sir. Excellent job.
Yep, good job.
All right, Mr. Faines, I believe you're up for this next one. It snowed, and then we got an announcement that it was going to stop in 4 minutes. Of course, my son sent me an email saying, "We're closing, it's snowing."
Keep working, you're inside.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening, board.
Good evening, Lee.
Mine's brief budget amendment number 5, where this amendment is basically just appropriating general donation and grant funds that the police department received for the Shop with a Cop program and the senior program. So this is just appropriating those receive, appropriate in the budget, that budget line item when necessary to go over due to expenditures. Next is amendment also appropriate, and then it's cleaning up some line items, year, one being the Veterans Monument, where we have purchased the banners, so they just appropriating those donations that we have received and sales from the banners that were stopped and brick. Appropriating those funds that we received this fiscal year for that, and also, moving funds, from Public Works Department for beautification into the downtown banners and decorations line, and also appropriating a little fund balance for those additional banners and ribbons, those that we purchased, that you all, agreed to a couple months ago, we purchased those. Just cleaning up the line items, and just so that we're in compliance with, the fashion. And that is all that's in this budget.
City Manager, we did real well with some of our veterans banners to start with. Where are we on those? Have they completely stopped selling now, or are we still promoting them, or where are we on that?
We're still promoting, pushing. We hadn't sold any lately, but every once in a while it picks up, and when we get an order in, we process them.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Faines on this?
It's not for Mr. Faines, it's for, City Manager. Can
Okay.
you double check? I got a question on Sunday about a brick that was purchased in July, and it is still not in the ground.
You know who?
If you can slip me the name or something,
give you the name.
I'll run it down. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
I know we were waiting to get a bunch of them together to place the order, but she's been waiting since July.
All right, if you'll provide that information, I'll run it down for you, ma'am.
All right, Commissioner Wilkins, would you like to make a motion to?
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that takes care of that part. Mr. Faines, I believe you've also got the next section.
Yes, sir. Tonight is, I bring forward the December, financial report, which is, will be considered our 6-month period. So if you look at your revenues, you're sitting at 47% collected, going out property taxes at 78% collected, and this report doesn't reflect, December's Avalon, and once we get down to the stormwater, it's not reflected in this 6-month period because of when we actually receive those funds. And also, as you're aware, sales tax, sales and use tax, we receive those 2 months, in arrears, and they will be reflected in the 6-month period. So, general fund expenditures, we're at 49% expense. Coming down to stormwater, revenues, we're at 85% of total stormwater revenue collected from the county. And stormwater fund expenditures, we're at 36% expense. Power bill, revenues, we have received both allocations of the power bill funds, so today we received $187,581, and of course some of that is, interest as well, so we exceeded that, estimated revenue for power bill, and we continue to go up due to the interest earned on those funds. And power bill fund expenditures are at 10% expense. But that includes some, capital projects that we have in the budget to kick it in this next capital fiscal year. So do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Motion.
Down this way, any questions for Lee? Do we need a motion for this?
No, sir.
I saw there, it's been adopted, so, all right. As always, sir, thank you very much. All right, let's see, financial updates. Number 10, discussion items, mural in downtown Creedmoor. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of y'all may be aware that the city of Oxford recently had an unveiling ceremony December the 5th for a military veteran art mural in Oxford. The mural was painted by local artist, Aletha Williams, and located at 117 Wall Street Tobacco Brewery. It is a tribute to the nation's heroes and a celebration of community and artistry. This initiative seeks to foster community engagement and promote collaboration with local schools and positions the city of Oxford on the North Carolina Mural Trail with aspirations of boasting tourism and showcasing the city's rich heritage. I thought I would bring this to the board to see if there's any interest or attention or interest in doing anything in CREEDMOOR similar to that and having a conversation with this lady.
Let me tag on to this. As many of you know, I was approached, people are going to think we're doing a whole bunch of stuff for the drugstore, but this is not for the drugstore, but I have agreed that that is a blank wall that stretches good width of the city, and that if the city would like to put a mural up there, they're more than welcome to. It can advertise a drugstore, it just can't advertise my drugstore. With which case, I have, as long as it's not obscene or anything, I have no problem with this board if they want to continue to do a mural, pretty much putting up anything they want to as far as the mural goes. Commissioner Kaczynski and I were at a and Ms. Commissioner Albright were at a City Vision, or not a City, Main Street conference, and they suggested not only a painting, but they had where they would do, what exactly was it? Right, but what kind of material were they gonna, they were talking about not painting it, but putting a synthetic mural across there that you could take down and then put a different one up rather than having to touch up the paint. Anyway, there's several ways we could do this if you're still interested. This young lady I met her at the event for this mural, which was just really excellent. She set it up so the flag, if you look at it one way, it looks like it does there, but if you look at it the other way, it looks like you're looking at it from the other side of the flag. So anyway, I want to bring this back because it has been mentioned before, and we've got an artist here from our area who's a veteran that would be interested in at least giving us some ideas and the cost and that type of thing if the board was interested. If not, I'm good with that too.
I'd absolutely love to see it.
Yeah, I know, that was probably one of my favorite things that we learned and talked about when we were down there. We had a good time, and I think this was something, and I liked how they had some of the schools, like one of the music departments and something else, they had come out and they had made, of course it wasn't, state road, but made walkways. They had like piano keys, that they had done, the music department things, so they had all different kinds of things. They had like a butterfly on the side of a building with wings that you could stand in and it looked like you had wings on, just all kinds of things that you can do. But yeah, I think it'd be great.
Just so we could at least talk to her, get some ideas.
Absolutely.
Mule.
Not a donkey, a mule.
Mule.
Yeah, we could do the one that Ed wants to drop out of a thing for New Year's Day.
That was me. I think we should give the mayor permission to go ahead and pay for a mural on the side of his building.
I'm providing
You got my permission.
I'm providing the canvas. Y'all need to provide.
There you go.
the part.
Great, yeah.
Mr. Way, are you okay with that?
Oh, absolutely.
So if you'll reach out to her and ask her to come over and take a look, if you meet with her, if you'll let me be part of that too.
We got a whole nice big wall at the community center too.
Well, with this one, it's in the middle of town. People will see it just coming by, so.
But I think
again,
this
whatever you
board
want to
should
do.
have final say on what it is.
The what?
I think this board.
Oh, yeah, but we're gonna talk to her and have her look and come up
We
with
don't
some
want
areas.
some Marilyn Monroe painting on the side of your wall, because that's the area you
But
grew up in.
even a small one, like.
Small Marilyn Monroe?
No, like Commissioner Albright was talking about, like the wings or something or that beside the community center. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
about that, Mr. Mayor?
We're always talking about how we can bring.
Yeah, we can look at what's available over there.
That's different.
All right, so you'll take care of that. That takes care of the mural. Commissioner Kuczynski, 10B, safety recommendations.
So, I put this on the agenda because of the snow event we had last week, kind of similar to what we got going out there right now. When there's Whitehall Drive in my subdivision is shaded, and Steve knows about it because God knows I've talked about it enough. And it's shaded, and it snows, and it doesn't matter if it's a little snow, a lot of snow, whatever snow it is always frozen, and it stays that way for days. And in the past, when I've called City Hall, before I was a commissioner, I asked for salt and sand to come down there, just to salt it down there, because nobody can walk. And I know I'm only one person in the city, but I'm a one-person commissioner in the city. And when I call and ask for something, I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for the citizens that I represent. And one of them is sitting right next to me, who had to go sliding on that ice every time he went to or came home from work. The snow happened on Friday night, and on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, I drove down around the city of Creedmoor, and I went down to Pecan Hill, because I know that there's quite a few areas down there that have shade. North Street had a section of it that was covered in ice. Troy Street was section covered in ice. Summit Crescent Drive was covered in ice, and Mill Street had ice on it. Now, one of these streets I know is a private road, but I drove all down through Pecan Hill, and I thought, I know that if I've got shade and ice in my neighborhood, then other places do, and that's what I did, and reached out to the city manager about it. And I don't believe we have a written policy on snow and ice in the city, and I would like to see a written policy on snow and ice in the city. The biggest shock that I had was I went across Church Street to Elm Street, took a left to go back to my subdivision. And Elm Street, I took a video from my car, and I sent it to Mike, and it was solid ice. Those two really bad curves were ice, and that's where our fire department house is. And I don't know what, I would think, I guess it's my mistake because I've just assumed it, that if we've got police officers driving through the city, and they've got a road that's caked with ice, they could call 911 and have 911 call DOT, but it didn't happen. I sent a message to Mike, Mike sent a message to Steve, Steve reached out, I reached out again on Monday, and it took until Monday afternoon before that ice got treated, and it was treated very well because the road became completely bone dry. So I don't know if they scrape it. I know we don't scrape below 2 inches. I understand that, and I totally agree with it. I don't have a problem. I don't want to tear up the roads. But we need to all cooperate, and it's for the safety of our citizens. These are city roads. Elm Street's a DOT road. I reached out to Jason Lee again today and said brine is on all the main roads, and Elm Street's not done again. So if there was a fire in my subdivision, or Robert's subdivision, or anything on that side of Elm Street, the fire department would have had to put chains on their trucks to get out there, and in the meantime, the house is going to burn to the ground. Or they would have to go up the street, down Main Street, and come in Whitehall that way. We're not here because we've got nothing better to do with our time. We're here for the citizens. We're all here for the citizens. And we perform very well for the citizens. It's just that this issue, I know when Karina was here, the last time there was snow, an abundance of snow, it was Karina, and I called here, and she sent somebody down there and they salted and sanded it. Whitehall Drive got salted and sanded on Wednesday, and I think Steve came back down on Thursday and hit it one more time. And I know that this stuff melts overnight, melts and then it's gonna refreeze overnight. I got that. I understand that. It's a futile. But we have people who pay their taxes, and they deserve to have clean roads. So I would like to see this not happen like this again. And Bobby says, well, we haven't had snow in 3 years. I got that. But every time it snows, like it is right out there right now, we need to take care of our citizens. Steve, I've known that you've slept overnight at the Public Works Building to be here first thing in the morning. So that's my piece of it. Like I said, Commissioner Way came from Wake County and he comes down Whitehall Drive. And I'm not picking on the police department, but if they're driving around the city and they see something like that, and it is DOT, reach out. Why can't we reach out? That's all I got to say.
Commissioner Albright.
I'm going to piggyback on Commissioner Kaczynski's speech here. I also kind of chimed in on her and let her know that the sidewalks were pretty icy. I know the sidewalks from the community center to the crosswalk, whichever school you want to call it now, were salted, but from the car wash in the shade down to the boardwalk and then onto the boardwalk up on the other side were ice for probably 4 days. And I think if we can salt the ones here by the community center that belong to us, then we should be able to salt those down there too, because it was really bad. And people, I know we didn't have school, but people were still walking their animals and things, and we don't want somebody to fall on our property on our watch. And I know that I think Don Schwiniger said we didn't have any measurable snow for 1,000 days, but I think everybody in Wake County and Durham County and all those other counties are always prepared, even though we don't get snow for however long. I think Creedmoor should be prepared with what we need to do too, even if it's just for some salt and some sand on the sidewalks. I think if you take care of the community center, you need to take care of the sidewalks too. And even though, you know, it's probably every 3 years or so that we get these things, we still need to be prepared and make sure that our community is taken care of with this. So that's my...
City Manager, would you like to address this issue?
Yes, I would, thank you. And Commissioners, y'all are right, we do need something in writing. In the past, Public Works has had a standing policy, if they didn't get 2 inches, if they got 2 inches or more, they'd go out and attack the roads and sidewalks and everything else. But, so I reached out to see what Butner was doing, spoke with Jordan McMillan, and he said in the past when he came to Butner, they didn't do anything until the sun came out, and they waited until they had 3 inches, but Jordan knows sooner or later they're going to get in a weather event that he has to have a plan for. And that just wasn't an acceptable plan to him. But anyway, so STEM has spoke with Mr. Casey Dover. He has a contracted gentleman that lives over that way that puts sand salt out for the STEM community. This will be a annex. We will work up a general policy or procedure for this right away. But as I look back through some city documents, when the city was working on a emergency operation plan back in 2016, which I have a copy of, that was a basic plan for any emergency event that might happen in Creedmoor. Then there were part twos or annexes of this plan that were put together individually that addresses severe weather, flooding, terrorism, civil disturbance. So annexes can be drafted to go into our emergency operation plan, but in the interim, we do need something in writing, and we will begin work on that right away to address the concerns or complaints that we receive.
What we're gonna do tonight or tomorrow?
Steve is making a decision today before he goes home whether to spend the night or whether to come back in the morning with his crew. He's waiting.
You want me to send the dogs down to keep you company?
Yeah, so.
You could ride them.
Yeah, I constantly check the weather reports all day long. Last week they were estimating 14 to 16 inches. This week it's gradually gone down to 3 to 4, 5 to 6. It's continued to come down. Checking it just now. It's estimated at still less than 1 inch. It's, I understand it's snowing out there now. So I've given the see the authority to make the call whether he wants to stay the night, get it first thing in the morning, or come back first thing in the morning with his crowd. Steve?
Hey, Steve Edwards, Public Works Director. Don't get to see all much, but anyway, glad to be here. I just want us to remember public safety, and what they do and what the fire folks do. That's kind of the priority. The sidewalks, we've treated parking lot entryways to our facilities that are open because we required employees to work there, i.e. dispatch, or if we had a reservation at the community center, or the public coming to use the gym, we need to make it safe to walk into that facility. Then you've got the sidewalks and so forth. So just as part of this plan that we come up with in this SOP, I guess we'll do the thoroughfares, vehicle traffic, EMS, police, all that first, and then go from there. So it's just a sidewalk, it takes a day to get to it. I just want to make y'all aware that the reason we did those is because people had to get to work there in the public. So.
Yeah, I just know that, that part is shaded, in the winter with the way that the sun sets.
Yeah.
And it was a sheet of ice from the top of that sidewalk the whole way to the other side for probably 4 days. And, people were walking their dogs and of course we didn't have school, but I still think that, some people still like to exercise and stuff, and I think we should, just make sure it's clean for them.
And like the elevated bridge that you mentioned over there that you walk on, there's a creek below it. If I'm throwing calcium chloride into, I just wanted to be careful. I don't want to have a policy to be putting that stuff in a creek or a water. That's already maybe,
Yeah.
So it's no cookie cutter thing, but we're gonna come up with something better than what we have.
I mean, it's like this powdery snow, that's gonna blow right off, that's not a problem, but it was the ice that was the problem for
That's
days.
why you storm.
I don't think we counted on that either, so.
Commissioner Kuczynski.
Kevin, if somebody walks on sidewalks in Creedmoor and slips and falls and gets hurt, are we liable?
I'll give you the lawyer answer, and it depends, but generally not. I mean, if somebody is contributorily negligent, if they know that the conditions are icy out there, they choose to go out, they're disregarding ice spots, they're not, using their common sense, and they fall, that's their own fault, and they will bear the consequences of that.
There's not an ambulance chaser that would take that case.
Well, I'm sure there are plenty of ambulance chasers who would take that case. Whether that would survive a motion to dismiss, is a whole other question.
So Steve, can we block off Robinson Creek Bridge? Can we
Close it.
Can we close it?
Close the sidewalk. We're not required to provide someone a way to walk.
The best idea is to close
their
it.
job, or to an official facility, say it's a hospital, which we don't have, fortunately, but police, fire, that's why I start with to me, that's an essential function. When the governor came on TV last time and asked everybody to stay home, the new governor, I told him, he said, please don't drive unless you have to. That was initially when it was first happening.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, of course, people want to get out.
Last week?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
You were on TV and said, unless you have to go out for a central reason, please stay home. When it first was happening. But
I have enough trouble getting out walking when it's clear and sunny. I know I'm not getting out on the ice.
but yes, ma'am, we're gonna work on that.
We have salters and spreaders, right?
We have two spread boxes, yes.
From a property management standpoint,
The worst thing for a sidewalk is calcium chloride, I'm just gonna say that. Remember the one that was delaminated by the elementary school, we had to tear all that out and replace it because it was scaling and.
Yeah, but I mean, brine is just salt with water, that's not gonna hurt anything.
Concrete.
23% salt and 77% water is what they recommend mixing that by weight. So it's still salt, but
Yeah.
there is nothing really good. So when I was at Duke, we used something that was urea, it's like cow urine, and I don't think we want to go to that extent.
No,
For the environment, there's nothing left.
the problem you run into is if you touch any part of the sidewalk, then you've made a conscious effort to know that you need to clear the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So I say we don't touch any of the sidewalks.
Unless it's a workplace, someone has to get there.
I mean, but I mean, if you touch any sidewalks and you come upon the situation, well, you cleared this part of the sidewalk, why didn't you clear this one?
Or I assumed you cleared that one before I stepped on it. And the businesses pretty much take care of the places in front of their doors.
businesses.
I mean, I think that the city certainly has an obligation to clear on, city-owned property or may have an obligation, I guess I don't know that. These are the questions that developing a policy will answer. These are the things that we'll work through and figure out what we feel the city's responsibilities are or should be, and how best to address those things.
Any other questions? Because Mike's going to be working on this safety plan. We're going to get it up and running, and it should address any and everything that anybody's concerned with. If not, we can always add to it once it gets completed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, we move to city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number one I've got listed here, the initial kickoff conference for the emergency operation plan took place on December the 16th, and a PO was issued to that contractor. Our first stakeholder meeting is scheduled for January the 24th with all key players, to include the CREEDMOOR Volunteer Fire Department.
You've got the 22nd. Is
I
that,
do. That date changed today. The vendor called and wanted to know because of the inclement weather if he could push it back 2 days.
okay.
So we notified all our players, including the fire department, and we're keeping Commissioner Way involved in this notification process in case he is able to join us at any one of those. DC3 executive summary for the month ended December 31st with a reported 36 work orders opened and 34 closed. A kickoff meeting for the 10-year Parks and Recreation Comprehensive System Plan. Master plan took place January the 9th. The McAdams Company has begun their research and data collection to be followed by an open house community engagement event and a meeting with the CPRC in late February, early March. This is an update, I think. In the last correspondence from Scott Schroyer, we referenced the need for a fire hydrant maintenance plan, which I sent out to the board today, so that's an update from what I've got listed in my report, but you've all seen that now, and that's been circulated for comment to feedback to Scott. The clerk and I are currently working on the mayor's presentation for the upcoming Granville County Budget Retreat scheduled for February 17th at the Expo and Convention Center. And with the resignation of the city-county grant writer effective January the 10th, the county manager has informed me that due to budgetary concerns, the position will not be filled in FY 2026. A copy of the 2025 quarterly activity report is included in this package. The city has made 2 quarterly payments totaling $20,172 with a return in grants awarded of only $5,300. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Mike Frangos if he will step to the podium and update the board on recent discussions with the merger discussion of the CREEDMOOR Planning Board and Board of Adjustment.
So we've only had a chance to talk in person to the planning board members, but none of them are in favor of serving or merging committees. They both feel that the duties are distinctive and separate, and they feel it's best to keep them separate. The one thing that they did suggest to the board would be that we align the meeting times and dates, and potentially we can have certain members that would want to serve on both boards. Keisha, for instance, serves both on the planning board and the board of adjustment. Chris Foley, who's another well-informed member, could potentially serve in both capacities. So that might be a way to be sure that we cover both boards' membership issues. But as far as having, one member to serve on both, a lot of the others felt that it was going to be too much of a challenge and they didn't want to undertake.
Any questions for Mr. Frangos on this?
Yep.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, that concludes city manager's report and department heads. SIGWASA report. Commissioner Way, Commissioner Kuczynski.
Right ahead, man. Get ready.
I had it on my screen. I don't have it up on my screen anymore.
Stand by, sir.
Hang on 1 second. I got it. All right. At our last SIGWASA meeting, we were all informed that all municipalities were asked if they wanted to get a surety bond to cover any violations that could happen about our stormwater ordinance during construction of the I-85 wastewater project. Butter decided they wanted the SIGWASA to provide the surety bond, and CREEDMOOR advised SIGWASA that they didn't want it. I was personally not happy about the decision on CREEDMOOR's part because neither I nor Commissioner Way were advised about it at all until we read it on the agenda that night. At no cost to Creedmoor taxpayers or a minimum cost to Siwasa, it was turned down by the city. Let me remind everyone that the repairs to property on Furbo and Clifton Avenue were completed, and I had pushed to get the Furbo Street project completed for 5 years. Mike knows every time I said Furbo, he almost fell out of his chair. The total cost of both these projects is approximately $500,000, and they were stormwater issues on both of them. I've been told that the community development director has the power to make this decision. While I do not object to his authority, I would like this board to collectively give their opinion on this issue. My concern is whether the contractor that is suggested by the engineer damages our stormwater system or violates the ordinance with our taxpayers. They will be the ones paying for the repairs again because Creedmoor didn't take this insurance plan out. So I'm bringing it to the board as a whole so that you know what's going on. I would like us, there's no cost to Creedmoor until we have to use it. And I don't, like I said, I'm not disputing Mr. Franco's authority. I didn't know anything about it till we got to the agenda that night. So I would kind of like the board to give us all an idea of whether they think we should do this or not. It may be too late, I don't know. The next issue on Siwasa is in the social media statements by citizens of Creedmoor. First, Commissioner Way and I have been appointed by the mayor and confirmed by this board. We serve on behalf of the citizens of Creedmoor. That is why we voted against the rate increase for this year. However, we are only 2 votes on a board of 7. The rate increase was approved despite our votes against it. So let me just clear one thing up. Changing leadership in Creedmoor will give the mayor the option to appoint 2 different commissioners with no knowledge of how Siwasa operates, the limits of its authority, or how to make it better without raising rates on the small amount of customers we have. If that does happen, there will be only 2 votes on the board of 7 against. If the former mayor of Creedmoor wants to explain that he sold Creedmoor water system to Siwasa because the board told him to do so, then the same rule applies here. Commissioner Way and I act on behalf of the board and the citizens of Creedmoor at all times, but we are only 2 votes on a board of 7. We can want anything in the world, but if the board does not see it our way, we don't win. I have also asked the executive director to put a discussion on the next Siwasa meeting about the PFAS system and a way to filter PFAS out right now to the tune of $20 million right now, which spread over 5,600 customers is going to need another rate increase. But since the social media content and citizens of Creedmoor want this fixed right now, we can go into that expense right now. But it is going to be a major rate increase, and we have the right to increase rates any time of the year.
Commissioner Wilkins.
So about the surety bond, I guess my question is, why would we turn that down, Mr. Franco, city manager?
Because we trust Siwasa. They are our partners, quasi-governmental organization. They're not a private developer. They're never skipping town. We will know where to find them when there is a problem.
To that I say trust and verify.
And it's a performance bond, not a maintenance bond. So Commissioner Kaczynski, your examples really aren't true because...
And I was going to ask you to explain that.
This is about performance. This is about completing the work
as designed. But when that work is completed, the bond will be returned. We'd only be left with our inspection and enforcement authority, like we would before it's completed. We send a letter of violation to Seguasa as the landowner. We fix it.
So it doesn't save us any money at all, the performance bond?
No.
It doesn't cost us anything, so how?
No, it doesn't cost us anything either, correct, but it doesn't save us any money. It's a matter of trust. They're gonna build it the way they say we build it, we inspect it and confirm that it's built. Done deal. No money transferred, nothing harmed, nothing came.
Taking out the trust factor, what other reason why we wouldn't do it? I trust but verify, that's me.
I understand.
Seguasa's not doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to trust, the relationship that we have with Seguasa, we just didn't feel that we got, I'll give you a counter example. Mass Pay Urgent Care, Bill right now, our food line, that's a private company. We definitely have a performance bond for them, because for them it'd be easy to say, I'm just not doing your BMP.
Right.
Again, Seguasa is who they are. We know that. We know the address, we know the violation of it too. We know the person responsible for answering. We know the board members who are going to be there to make the decision or not to execute.
Seguasa's not doing the work.
No, but they'd be responsible for the work as the property owner. And that's who our ordinance
We'd have to go after
is
the
beholden
contractor.
to.
Now, you go after Seguasa, we probably also name the contractor as initial tenant, but Seguasa, the property owner, would be the one who's ultimately responsible. But they could either interplead the contractor or go after the contractor to be reimbursed under whatever agreement they might have with the contractor. But the property owner would be, the primary defendant that we would go after in the event we need to.
So Butner doesn't trust Seguasa, that's what you're saying?
I think that's the difference, that's the simple difference. I think Butler might not fully be aware of their right or the power that, they have to say. That's not in this case. That's the way I felt. The ordinance gives me the power to make that decision, and I made the decision during the site plan.
Commissioner Wade, do you have anything to add to the report?
No, I think she pretty much covered it.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Very detailed.
Covered all my bases.
So I guess my question is, if I may,
Yes.
are we gonna get consensus about this?
Well, I like the idea. It's easier to work with people you trust, and you're liable to get, what's the old saying, more done with
Sugar, honey,
instead of vinegar. And we're in partnership with them, and I think it's important that we respect them and hopefully they respect us. And since the surety bond really is kind of saying we don't trust you anymore, even though we got two commissioners sitting on their board, it makes me uncomfortable. Commissioner Kuczynski.
I want it clear and on the record, I am not saying that I don't trust Seguasa. I'm just saying it's not gonna cost us anything, it's not gonna cost Seguasa anything, it's just a matter to look out for our taxpayers, and that's why I would like to do it, so the taxpayers don't have to deal with this in years after I'm gone. So that's the only reason I would say that we would do it.
But appearances carry a lot of weight too, so that's what I'm saying.
We may be in a minority, but I agree with Commissioner Kuczynski.
Thank you.
Commissioner, all right?
Well, I could probably be really honest and not say that I know enough about the whole water thing to say that I actually have an opinion about it. I understand what Mike is saying and that he has the authority to do his job, and I trust your judgment for that. But I also understand what Commissioner Kuczynski is saying by looking out for the community, because we do pay a lot for our water. And it is something that I think she's trying to protect the citizens, which we are all that,
Supposed to do.
for
Well,
what
and
she
and I
wants.
understand that to a certain extent, but I also know, have we had any reason not to trust them up to this point? So that's my thing. If
Yeah.
they broke, don't fix it type of deal. And by saying you haven't caused us any problem yet, but we don't trust you, so we're gonna do this type of deal. I don't, like I say, the optics make me
The
uncomfortable.
optics, yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, but we kinda got a.
My calmness is kind of eluding me,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like that. There were some statements made just now that were political, which have nothing to do with Seguasa, about an ex-mayor or about who gets appointed to Seguasa. Believe me, everybody since I've been coming to this city meeting for 12 years, nobody that was appointed to Seguasa by this board knew anything about Seguasa or water. And if the substance is you keep your job because you were there, then that's fine and dandy. I have no problem with that, but don't, I've come to meetings where a commissioner said, we want to do this for Seguasa, give them something. Another commissioner who said, we want to give them, what did they do? They threw them off the board and appointed new people who knew nothing. The problem with Seguasa, as far as I'm concerned, is most of the people on that board know nothing about water and sewer.
Well,
Jimmy Gooch is the only person on that board that has water and sewer experience. It should be, the city should be allowed to appoint two people on that board that have engineering experience, water and sewer. I understand the need to have commissioners to protect the city's welfare. But the bottom line is, I go to every one of those meetings, and you could hand me those minutes, the agenda, and I could go home and read it. And I could watch the next meeting, and I'll tell you, every one of those things turned out exactly the way, except for the raise in the rates, which our commissioners did vote against. But the bottom line is, like I just said, we'll spend $20 million to get PFAS out of the water with a maybe thing that might work, and they'll find out 2 years later that that doesn't work, and it's gonna cost $5 million a year to replace those filters, not $1 million. So, again, there's so many problems with Seguasa that this board definitely is not gonna solve them. And I just don't wanna see now it get into, because of social media, where you have 50 people, you probably would never find a post in social media that has 50 people on it. Yet I go to Seguasa meetings, and there's nobody there. I come to City of CREEDMOOR meetings, and there's one person in this room that doesn't need to be here. But people complain about what we do. They complain about our growth. We want a growth. And then you get, like you said, ex-officials that want to get in the fight and push for maybe their next job. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for the people. But the people gotta come. I mean, how many people called the city, how many people called the police to complain about icy roads?
We got one.
So again, they should be here saying, my road was icy, where the hell were you? But they're not. They may post on Nextdoor social media. Again, I'm just a little old guy, tired of people complaining. But they don't complain to me. They don't complain to the right people. They complain to somebody who they know is gonna get on with them and say, rah, 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 you're right, you're right, you're right. So the bottom line is, I think we should, with this surety bonds, we've not had a problem with Seguasa, working with Seguasa. They haven't stiffed us, we haven't stiffed them. Again, it may just look like an overreach by us getting this, or Butner has a problem with them, I don't know. I don't think we need it. If we gave this man a responsibility to say yes or no, he should have it. If we give, Steve and the city manager the right to sit down and write policy about safety, we should let them do it. The only thing we should say is, hey, we maybe weren't all that happy with what happened, sit down and put something on paper. We gotta play nice. The only person that takes the brunt of my not so niceness is my boss. But she's my boss, you can get mad at your boss.
You want me to help you down there?
You don't box now. But I'm okay with Mike's decision.
Let me finish my sentences and I'll come back to you here just a minute. Commissioner Kaczynski, know how you feel? Commissioner Way? I'm in favor of the surety bond or not?
I'm a representative for the citizens of Creedmoor and my neighbors. I am assigned a task on the Seguasa board. Seguasa is a business organization. My heart is in the city of Creedmoor first. I'm only of one vote for Seguasa. I can be replaced tomorrow. It's happened. And then I don't have any say-so. But I try to be the voice of reason when I'm on the Seguasa board. And, I never trust the government. So I'm all about making sure that we're taken care of.
So you're in favor of the surety bond?
I am.
Okay.
But, and that's me speaking as a member of the Seguasa board.
Well,
And a representative of the city of Creedmoor.
okay, that's what
Because at the end of the day, Seguasa pays the city of Butner $500,000 a year. It was part of their contract settlement when it was sold and that whole system thing. And they're already getting money from Seguasa. We don't get any money from Seguasa. And they need a bond and the $500,000.
Well, I guess Seguasa looks like it. They gave it to us and that $10 million or $15 million.
At the end of the day, I just want to look out the best interest for us. But I also respect that we have in the situation where Mr. Frangos has the authority to do what he needs to do. And if he feels like that he can walk down there and say, hey, buddy, you need to fix this, then I'm going to be right there with you. Hey, buddy, we're going to need to fix this. I'll go with you. We'll go in together. So, I mean, that's just my thing is, I don't, as a citizen, I gotta pay my water bill. If I don't pay my water bill, they're gonna come cut my water off, even though I'm a board member and a member of the Seguasa board. You think they're gonna give me a break because I didn't pay my water bill? I can tell you for a fact, no.
Commissioner Wilkins.
Yeah, I'm sitting here to listen to everybody somewhat conflicted. That's because I trust what Carl said, I trust what Mr. Franco says, I trust what the city manager says. But somehow I think it would be wrong not to take care of the citizens of Creedmoor. So I still lean towards a surety bond. Yes.
All right. Well, consensus, Mr. Frangos or city manager, whoever, would be that we do the surety bond. City manager, would you like to come in?
I'd like to pipe in. Mike and I talked about this in depth on several occasions to help me understand it. And not this board, but a previous board gave him the authority to make this decision. And I would not be a good manager if I didn't support my team, if I thought they made a good decision, and I believe Mike made a good decision. And so that's why I stand behind him. I don't have any reason to doubt it. I've never had an issue with Mike. Being honest and truthful with me, so I stand behind his decision. Now, to go back and require this, Mike, does that create issues or any things, concerns?
Look, but you all trampled on my authority and said, no, the board says you must. So now I have to go back on my decision to say they must. And we haven't lost anything. Everybody feels we've lost something. There is nothing lost here. A bond sits in an envelope. It is nothing more than a figurative guarantee. Kevin, you ever fought an attorney over a bond? They don't just give it up.
Right. Well, and that's, I think that's an important point as well, is that, there's been a lot of talk about protecting the citizens of Creedmoor. And regardless of whether a bond is required or not, the city is not obligated to pay anything. So if the bond is called, and assuming that we could even get a hold of the cash in the first place, which would be an entirely separate hassle, then that cash is used to pay for whatever, additional work needs to be done. Without the bond, the city just sues Sigwasa and the contractor and gets them to pay for whatever additional work needs to be done.
Okay, but hold on, we start off with a violation.
Right.
We start off with a courtesy warning.
Right.
We say, hey, there's not enough riprap installed here, why don't you get another load and put it in? Hey, it's not deep enough, it's not wide enough, come back and fix it. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, I'm gonna get my contractor out there tomorrow, and we'll solve this problem for you. I'd be out there the third day, and I'd approve it, and we'd do it.
The bottom line is that in no case is there money coming from the city of Creedmoor to pay for the additional work. In either case, if we get to the point where there's a dispute about whether or not additional work needs to be done, the city will probably have to incur legal fees one way or the other. So there's no real expense that the city will incur that it would not incur but for the bond. Either way, I take no position on whether or not the city should or should not ask for a performance bond at the outset. But I do think that from a material perspective, there's not a significant increased cost to the public and to the city one way versus the other.
All right, with this additional information, Commissioner Wilkins.
I know I should shut up now, right? One of the things that really bothers me right now is what Mr. Franco said. I don't want to usurp anybody's authority. That's damaging. For that reason only, I want to reverse what I was saying. I say no surety, but I'm not going to do that to him.
Okay. Commissioner Kaczynski. Thank you. I didn't see it.
So Kevin, if they did damage to the stormwater and we went to do anything against them and we sued them and we lost the case, who would have to fix the stormwater?
Well, if you're proposing an illogical hypothetical. If they damage something, first, I think Mike's point earlier, we're not talking about maintenance funds. So if there's something happens after the work has been complete, regardless of whether we got a performance bond in the first place or not, Sigwasa is not obligated to come back and repair that anyway.
Right.
Now, I think what we are talking about is a performance bond, which says that Sigwasa has to construct or cause the project to be constructed in accordance with the specification. Now, if we have a bond and Sigwasa comes back and says, we disagree with Mike, the plans or specifications don't call for a 10-foot wide trench, they call for an 8-foot wide trench, and that's what we constructed, so we're not doing any more work. They've got a bond, then we would attempt to call the bond and then use that money to pay somebody else to do whatever additional work the city feels like needs to be done. We don't have a bond, then we sue Sigwasa and say, if you're on the approved plan set, there's an 8-foot wide or a 10-foot wide trench. You're telling us we've had it inspected. It's 8 feet wide. There's no doubt about that. You're telling us that you don't need to do any more work. You're wrong based on the objective plan set. So now fix it. And provided that and that's why these things are objective and defined in clear, precise terms on a plan set. We don't lose that case because the facts are clear. It calls for a specific width or whatever the case might be on a particular project. Mike inspects it, determines whether or not it's been met. If it's not been met, like Mike said, he might go to Sigwasa and say, well, gee, we've inspected it, you're not meeting the standards, you're not constructed it as approved. In, I think, 99 out of 100 cases, Sigwasa will come back and say, okay, you're right about that, sorry, we or our contractor missed that specification, we'll go out and fix it now. In the 1% of cases where that doesn't happen, it's a very clear, objective error. We file a lawsuit, we get a court order saying Sigwasa go out there and fix it, or pay whatever cost the city needs to incur to hire somebody to fix it on their own, and we wind up in the same situation anywhere, where there's no city money, no public funds collected and expended by the city, expended on this project.
So there's no taxpayer dollars used at all? Can we get them to pay the legal fees?
Possibly.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a case-by-case basis, but it's entirely possible. It's certainly something that if hypothetically we want ourselves in that situation, certainly something we would ask for.
Okay, let's do this one more time. Has everybody said their piece? Let me do that rather than have to do this again. We're gonna do this by raise of hands so that I can make clear. All right, everybody in favor for the surety bond, raise your hand. All right, everybody against? All right, we have a consensus against the surety bond. If the minutes will reflect that.
Please, make sure.
All right, we move now to Commissioner's report, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Way.
I don't have anything tonight, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioner Kaczynski.
I have nothing.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Albright.
The only thing I attended, and I know Commissioner Kaczynski attended as well because we sat next to each other, but we went to the, music bingo at the community center. It was a good time. I took my folks along and, I thought we had a good time. I wish there was a little bit more different music in there. I think that would have been fun. I was like, even though it was 2000s, I was gone. I couldn't remember any of it. I thought I knew it all, but no, but it was good. Just Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you.
Commissioner Wilkins.
Yes, sir, I attended the third annual MLK breakfast at the community center. That's all I have.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Couple things. I attended the fire department dinner in December, and I appreciate all that they do and, the respect that they showed me as a ex-fire chief was, very much appreciated. I attended the MLK breakfast. I attended the December and January SIGLASA meetings. I want to thank our police department. For the last month, they had quite a few different kind of crazy affairs. And they handled them all well. And, we come out looking like a great community with a very community-minded police department. Last but not least, I checked how far the snow would go to Florida, and I want to request that be absent from the February 17th meeting, as I'm going to try to go far enough south into Florida that we won't get any of this. I'll be gone from the week of the 15th to the 22nd.
Okay, have fun.
Somebody make a motion to...
So moved, Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem, be excused.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Wilkins to excuse Mayor Pro Tem from that February meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. Anything else? All right, Mayor's report is Falls Lake Academy, their senior history class, invited Commissioner Tim Karen to come and speak about municipal government and county government, and he invited Mayor Linda Jordan and myself. We had a very exciting exchange with these students. I don't know why with students, it always seems like you gotta literally pull their teeth to get them to say anything or ask questions, but I think they learned a little more about how government worked and that we were not omnipotent, that we can't, especially the mayors and commissioners, you can't do everything that's requested of you. Also went to the MLK breakfast. My highlight of that was not only speeches, but I really enjoyed the mimes. They were excellent. Those two kids told the story that was mentioned in the song or the music that was being played. I really enjoyed them. There needs to be some additional adjustments made to the program.
I shared that with the city manager.
And also, I attended the CREEDMOOR Volunteer Fire Department. Commissioner Way, thank you again for including all of us to that function. I enjoyed not only the meal, camaraderie, but I enjoyed seeing the folks that were recognized, although I'm not sure what the CAT award thing was. But that and the years of service and being able to honor those folks, so I appreciate that. All right, is there anything else needs to come before the board?
It was a closed session, Mr. Mayor.
Closed session. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Made by Commissioner Wilkins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.